want to do some review with you guys, some Latin declension reviews, something that you can go over the summer, just to kind of brush up on your Latin before you come to class. It's something that Liam and I are doing just to make sure that we are prepared for everything. But review is mostly what we've already learned in foundations. As far as Latin nouns go, we've learned the 5 noun cases. We've learned the Latin noun rule about declensions. We've also learned first, second, third, fourth, and fifth declension nouns. But there's a couple of things that I want to show you to help you remember how to differentiate between the different declensions. And hopefully that will be helpful to you in class time. But first, let's review the 5 noun cases. The 5 noun cases are nominative, subject, genitive, possessive, dative, indirect object, accusative, direct object, ablative, object of the preposition. And the way we memorized it was with a song. I don't know if this is going to be helpful to you, but this has made it stick in my head. So we sing it like this: 5 noun cases, 5 noun cases, nominative, subject, genitive, possessive, dative, indirect object, accusative, direct object, ablative, object of the preposition. So that's how we memorize that. Kind of helps us to remember. And what we mean by noun cases is that whenever you hear the word, like for example, oh, that's a nominative noun in Latin, that means it's the subject of the sentence. Or if I say, oh, well, that noun is a dative noun, well, that means it's the indirect object of the sentence. And so we'll be digging into that this year. Also, the Latin noun rule that we've learned this past year in foundations. Latin nouns and pronouns have different endings called declensions. So when we memorize the declensions, what we're memorizing are the little endings of nouns that tell us, of nouns or pronouns that tell us which part of the sentence, which role it's playing in the sentence. For example, up here in the first declension, we see here we have nominative, and it starts with a. So if you have a noun, a Latin noun, that ends with the letter A, generally that means that it is being the nominative in the sentence, which means it's the subject of the sentence. So we'll be playing around with that in class. But speaking of first declension, the first declension nouns, the way we memorize it is, the first declension nouns goes I, ah, singular first declension. Hi, Tom. And then I, arum, is, us, is, plural first declension. Okay, the way that I remember that this is first declension is that it begins with the letter A, right? The way that we're memorizing this, the chart begins with the letter A, so I, right? Actually, it's pronounced I. Just like you say like a dog or a toy. The A would be pronounced but it's the letter A, and the letter A is the first letter of the alphabet, right? So that's how I remember that this chart is the first declension chart. If I covered this up and I just said I would be able to know that's the first declension because it starts with the letter A, or we would pronounce it but it starts with the letter A. All right? The second declension, the way we can tell the difference, if I were to cover up this, well, first of all, here is the second declension. Us, e, o, singular second declension. E, orum, is, os, is, plural second declension. And we've all memorized that song before. But the way that we differentiate is that it begins with an us. And us makes me think of I and you, right? I and you, or me and you. So we have us, E, and this letter I is pronounced E when it has a macron over it, but it's the letter I, so like I and you makes us. And how many people is that? 2. So that's how I remember this is the second declension, is that there's 2 people. Us, E, o, o. So that's the clue for that. So if this was covered up and I just heard us, E, o, o, I would see in my mind us and then the letter I. And so I would think, oh, that's 2 people. So that's second declension. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, the fourth declension also begins with us. But we'll come back to that because there's a different way to memorize the difference between the fourth and the second declension. All right, third declension begins with various, which just means that a third declension noun can have various endings, and that they're not going to always be the same. They can end in the letter X, or they can end in an S, or they can end in RS or O, OR. So there's various endings for the third declension. So various is E-M-E is singular third declension. Ace, ibis, ace, ibis is plural third declension. Now, when I hear that singing or that chart, or when I hear those declensions, I hear various first, and various to me is odd. So the way I memorize that this is the third declension is that various is the odd one out, and 3 is an odd number. So I just remember, oh, various, that means it's third because 3 is odd, so it's the third declension. Okay, and then we move on to the fourth declension. We've got us, us, ui, u, singular fourth declension, and then us, ibus, us, ibus, plural fourth declension. Now we've got here another us, but look, we've also got an us, right? So it looks like two us's. So I remember fourth is that an us plus another us, we've got two us's, so that's 4 people. So I've got 2 people here, 2 people here, that's fourth declension, us, right? As opposed to us, See that difference? There's an us with me and you, and then there's us, which is 2 us's, which makes fourth declension. So that's how I remember the difference between second and fourth, because the genitive is different. The e and the us. All right, and then moving on to fifth declension. Now you might be saying, well, third declension, 3 is odd, 5 is odd too, but 5 is the highest in declensions, the highest number, because we've got 1 through 5, 5 being the highest declension, and it starts with ace. Ace, A-E-A-E-M-A, singular fifth declension. Ace, arum, abus, ace, abus, plural fifth declension. And ace is the highest card when you're playing games, when you're playing a card game. So fifth is the highest declension, and it begins with ace. So ace, A-E. So ace would be the fifth declension because it starts with ace, because ace is the highest card in a card game. So that's all the different ways that we are using the Latin noun declensions to kind of memorize these different endings. I highly recommend going over them over and over and over. Just listen to those songs that we've listened to before in foundations, and really cement them in your mind and help yourself remember the difference between the declensions, right? Because you want to be able to remember which declension it belongs in, whether it's first, second, third, or fourth, or fifth. Also, just to make you aware, there's a chart here that I'm going to be posting to share with you, where there are some odd, some different ways to decline certain nouns. The first declension is always feminine, so it stays the same. The second declension is always masculine, except sometimes the second declension can be neuter. And in that case, this would be different. This would be E-O, O. And so there's a little chart I'll post about that you guys can have handy for if you ever encounter a neuter second declension noun, which we will in class. But for now, it's just really important to go back over what we've memorized in foundations and really cement it in your mind to be prepared for what's going to happen in Challenge A. Thank you for listening.